Coming up on CMI, in 20 years on the job, David Stern has steered the NBA from the brink of bankruptcy to the sea of prosperity. Now, the basketball commissioner sits down with Chris Myers and speaks frankly on what he likes and dislikes about the game he loves.
I really do believe that I have had and do have the best job in the world.
Stern also explains how he plans to fix the league's image problem, reveals what he really thinks about unruly owners and players, and responds to critics who dressed down his dress code.
Were you surprised the reaction that it got?
When did it become such a big deal for employees to adhere to some kind of dress protocol?
Find out what else the NBA's boss man has to say about the future of the league right now on CMI, the Chris Myers Interview.
Welcome to the program. It's a pleasure to have the commissioner of the NBA. He's been called everything from a savior to a dictator, but certainly held in high regard when it comes to doing what a commissioner has to do for his sport. Commissioner, thanks for having us up here at your NBA
Good to
office.
be here.
And did I fit the dress code? Okay.
Overdressed.
Well, you look good. How often have you heard that one? I'm sure, right? Nonstop.
Nonstop.
All right. I know you're a marketing guy, but that really got people talking about your league, the
Right.
NBA dress code.
No, it's and the interesting thing about it is if there were 450 players, I would say somewhere between 6 and 10 had a comment on it, but it was so delicious for the media that it had, as we say, legs.
Were you surprised the reaction that it got?
I was, and it's clear to me that the reaction was more than a reaction to a collar, jeans, and shoes. It was about what people were feeling, not players, but members of the community. We struck a responsive chord that got a lot of people very interested. I would say those that were in favor of it.
And the purpose for doing it again, and I know you've been over this, and how you arrived at the guidelines that you did.
Yeah, we think that we want to demonstrate a little bit more professionalism. It's the right thing to do. And it used to be something that was done as a matter of course. And over time, you get into different habits, and it becomes our job to correct those habits. Last year, we suddenly realized that there were players lying on the court in front of the bench, and we said, that's not a good idea. It's one thing if you have a back problem, but if you don't lie down. Hey, teams, find a place for your guys to sit. It looks more professional.
Did you talk to players or get feedback from players before setting the guidelines?
Oh, yes.
Yep.
We had a lot of feedback, a lot of discussions with players and with the union. In fact, people in sort of the pre-release, folks thought we were talking about jackets and ties, and when we came out with a short-sleeve shirt with a collar and jeans are okay, people said, oh, you guys are just a bunch of wimps. We'll not go all the way. Actually, most of our players are going beyond us.
Right, and some teams already had
Yes,
these rules
a couple
in
of teams
place.
have jacket and tie required on all team travel. So, and a number of teams prohibit jeans. So we were someplace right smack in the middle.
But when you heard with the chains and the sunglasses that the cultural, I even saw some history professor, analyzing and saying it's about the commissioner showing he's in control. Yeah. Is that where people making too much?
Yeah, that's the one that was unfair. I mean, I'm in control in the sense as a CEO.
Right.
But when did it become such a big deal for employees to adhere to some kind of dress protocol? I think that the reactions actually say more than the code does.
Did the brawl between the Pistons and Pacers in 2004, November 2004, have anything to do with that?
The answer to that is absolutely yes. What I've said to our players during collective bargaining negotiations and at the beginning of the season is that our players are much better guys than their reputations are. And what we're going to do together is to improve the reputations to the point of the fact. Our players prepare harder, play harder, do more in the community, or as much as any other group of athletes that I know. Yet, by a combination of statements that were made, criminal proceedings that were commenced, and one good solid brawl, there was a lot going on, and which was negative. And we decided that we were going to do a lot of different things. One, we are going to have our players signing more autographs. We're going to have them meeting with season ticket holders. We're going to have them doing more promotional appearances. And yes, there's this issue of a dress code. And really what we also decided was, because our players do so much, we were looking for some umbrella to demonstrate what they do. And hence, this summer we launched what we call NBA Cares, where we promised to raise $100 million, commit 1 million hours, and open 100 reading and playing centers in the next 5 years. Not a hard thing for the NBA family, because that's very much in our DNA.
So that brawl, it raised an issue, an image issue, because we heard words like thug and punk, more so afterwards.
Unfortunately, the brawl and its video replaying
Right.
again and again and again, gave the opportunity for people to generalize these thugs, these punks. That was the part that upset me the most. This was, as I've said, was a commissioner for 27,000 games, and this was one. The appropriate chagrin was expressed, apologies were made. People have, in effect, served their sentences, and now let's get back to basketball.
On the floor, the style of game, you hear critics say it's too defensive, it's not high scoring enough, even though the attendance figures are up. Do you like the game that you watch?
I would say that we have opened up the game a little bit. I think that the critics were correct that with our illegal defense guidelines, our game was getting to be awful and incomprehensible. One guy goes to the corner with the ball in isolation, and 4 guys sit on the bench, and that's supposed to be basketball. So by eliminating that and allowing a zone, but having defensive 3 seconds, and then with the point of emphasis on deciding that it wasn't fair to have 4 guys take a piece of a player on his way to the basket, I think we have opened up the game.
We'll continue with Commissioner David Stern from the NBA offices, talk about the age restriction in the NBA, ask him how he went from working at the family deli to being a lawyer to becoming a commissioner when we come back.
Also coming up.
If you'd like to, after you finish interviewing me, if you want to go hip-hop and go to a club, you can wear whatever you want to do.
You'll show me the spots?
I'll show you the spots, and we can change.
Plus,
Sheryl Swoopes of the WNBA. A very successful player, recently came out openly admitting that she's gay. Has it crossed your mind in terms of how you would respond if some player wanted to come out?
find out next on CMI, the Chris Myers Interview. You're watching CMI, the Chris Myers Interview.
Most important for us is that the season is going to be upon us soon, and as a basketball fan and a particular fan of the NBA, I am elated.
Welcome back from the NBA offices, talking with Commissioner David Stern, who recently a 5-year contract extension. So I imagine you'll want to continue this for a while. If you could be the commissioner of another sport, which one would you like?
I go for tennis.
Tennis. Boy, they need help with a lot of...
No, I'm just a big tennis fan. I enjoy watching both the men and the women.
Do you talk to the commissioners, Paul Tagliabue,
Everybody.
Gary Bettman?
We all get together to complain about owners. The commissioners lament.
So the owners are more trouble than the players, is what you're
always.
saying.
That's what you do when you're a commissioner. No, we recognize that we have good jobs, and we have a lot of fun together, and we swap some tails. I'll see your tail and raise you one.
And you look and say, good job with that one, and I'm glad I'm not in your shoes this week.
Absolutely.
You've been at this for 2 decades, and in a sentence or two for people who've watched and seen you, how would you describe having gone from working at your family deli and becoming a lawyer and then becoming the commissioner of the NBA?
You know, I really do believe that I have had and do have the best job in the world. I think that it's a fun game. It's great to be part of it, but it also is a place where we are a very egalitarian game. And that's an important thing in this country. I grew up in this league at a time when people said it wouldn't succeed because it was too black.
The league is predominantly black, so when you hear things, dress code or even age restriction, right away some players say it's discriminating against or it's racist.
Right.
You hear that, which I know you don't have to defend that here, but what kind of research, I guess, or how do you handle a predominantly black league that you want to keep mainstream?
Well, I think you just treat it like the business, in effect, that it is, recognizing the responsibilities that come with this and the special opportunities and responsibilities that you have. I just don't, the racial issue is just too easy and cop-out.
So it's old news, really.
Yeah, the reality is that our guys prove every night that America's game, which is played predominantly in the NBA by African Americans, is the world's game increasingly. And the world is paying our players the ultimate compliment by copying their games and adopting it. So I just don't see that as an issue.
Sheryl Swoopes of the WNBA, a very successful player, recently came out openly admitting that she's gay. I've seen some reaction from players in the NBA saying we don't know how we would handle that if that was announced in our league. Has it crossed your mind in terms of how you would respond if some player wanted to come out in the NBA and announce that?
No, I think our players might have some reactions and then they would get over it very soon. I'm really reminded of Magic Johnson announcing he was HIV positive. And certain players saying, well, they're not going to play with him because they might get HIV from perspiration. So that's
a few did right away, I recall.
That's not going to happen.
Right.
That's what the medical evidence is against, not for. And we're playing through it, guys. And they behave like troopers, and I believe that's what would happen in this case.
The recent age limit of 19 or a year removed from high school, how did you arrive at that, and did you want to make it a higher age?
We had put a proposal for 20 on the table instead of the existing 18. And like all things in collective bargaining, 19 was a compromise. And so we're at 19.
And the idea in terms of the league, players developing or players being...
I would say it goes to two things. Number one, leaving LeBron aside because he's in a class completely by himself, the average 18-year-old player has not been contributing from a basketball perspective to our teams. And he hasn't been, I think, getting the development opportunity that would be good. It's a basketball decision. In addition, our teams are being forced to make judgments upon people, prematurely, I would say. And so to let them see the players for another year would be great. And then we wouldn't have waived players with, or with large amounts of money due them, or better yet, players who are underdeveloped, who maybe would have gone someplace else, like college, and if they didn't make the starting lineup, understand that maybe they weren't ready for the NBA and allow themselves to develop, maybe even better than they otherwise would have. So we think putting the brakes on it was a good thing.
And you hear the criticism, and I'm not even sure where hip-hop is at this point, that the NBA embraced hip-hop and now it's trying to shed that.
I must say that we are embracing youngsters as our audience. We're embracing everybody, but we're particularly strong amongst youngsters, and those youngsters embrace hip-hop music and hip-hop fashion. So whether we embrace it or we embrace consumers who embrace it, it's really all part of the same thing. And we're not, and actually, it's okay if you'd like to, after you finish interviewing me, if you want to go hip-hop and go to a club, you can wear whatever you want to.
You'll show me the spots?
I'll show you the spots and we can change.
Okay.
But for this show, you're wearing a uniform.
Right.
So I wouldn't suggest that how you recreate is anything other than your business, as long as it's legal. That's what you do. There were just different uniforms that people have, and we all do. We dress differently on weekends than we do when we go to the office, and that's what this is about. We're not rejecting anything.
All right, some final thoughts with Commissioner David Stern, the random thoughts on everybody and everything from Mark Cuban to Michael Jordan when we come back.
Also coming up.
When you hear there's always the next Michael Jordan. LeBron James, though, is he the guy?
I think that Michael was unique. I'm not even saying that LeBron won't be better.
Plus,
how much longer would you want to do this beyond the contract?
In the next couple of years, I think I'll be ready to put a sort of a point on it all.
coming up on the Chris Myers Interview, David Stern might seem soft and cuddly, but you wouldn't want to make him angry.
You can be friendly with somebody and then call them up and say, hey, listen, you know, the hammer's coming down because you did it.
Also on the way,
who's the best player you've seen in your run? Is that an easy one?
You know, it's not an easy thing to say, okay?
That's coming up next on the Chris Myers Interview with David Stern. You're watching the Chris Myers Interview with David Stern.
And we're back with Commissioner David Stern from the NBA offices. You seem, when I opened the program, I mentioned, you know, savior and dictator. The dictator part. Are you comfortable?
I like despot better than dictator.
Okay.
I was just wondering about your choice of words.
Oh, I didn't make that. Somebody else said that along the way.
Monarch. I mean, there's a range of
But the power that you have, I think people sit back when you make the tough call on a Ron Artest or the Dreska, they say, "Boy,
that's my job."
Yeah.
And that's where it falls. And to do anything else would be to run away from the job.
And you didn't hesitate or waver on that. And I don't want to go back to the brawl so much as to how you handled that. And of course, you're going to have critics. But you set a tone right away. And Ron Artest thought the punishment, 73 games in the playoffs, was too harsh, but punishment was served. You've since talked with him, spent some time.
I have. The reality is that you pull up your socks and make a decision. And that's just the way it is.
When you hear there's always the next Michael Jordan we keep hearing about, and you arrived when Michael did, and you've gone through that. LeBron James, though, is he the guy who can take the league, or do there have to be a number of guys?
No, I think that Michael was unique. I'm not even saying that LeBron won't be better, but the reality is, in a $3 billion enterprise with 30 teams on a global basis, it's everybody, all hands on deck, because it's going to be many games, hundreds of games being televised, literally scores of teams, players, being focused on in a very significant way. I think it's going to be spread out amongst a really good group of youngsters and some not such young people. Is
Michael Jordan, or who's the best player you've seen in your run? Is that an easy one?
It's not an easy thing to say. Okay, some combination of. Now, there is no combination. You could say Bill Russell or Michael Jordan or Magic or Dr. J. I mean, there were so many great players. Obviously, Michael has had such an enormous impact at exactly the time he came in, when you first really did begin with sports marketing and the growth of television and the like. I would say Michael has had a singular impact on our league.
Friendship with players or coaches over the years, how do you, being the boss, guard against that, but also embrace that?
Oh, I don't guard against it. I mean, you can be friendly with somebody and then call them up and say, hey, listen, the hammer's coming down because you did it.
Okay.
And that's true with owners as well. I have a lot of owners who have stopped talking to me for periods of time, but we get back together again. I mean, because their teams never do anything wrong. But my job is to deal with players, deal with coaches, deal with owners, and I think that that's the best way I can serve them, by cutting it right down the middle.
Let me get, if I could, just a sentence thought from David Stern on a few names that I can throw out here. For example, Mark Cuban.
Terrific owner, particularly for the fans of Dallas. They have a real sense that he's thinking about their team, winning, and their entertainment experience of the building. Very positive.
How about Allen Iverson?
He wins people over appropriately, as leaving it all out there. I think that it doesn't matter what how many tattoos you have, or whether you speak for the hip hop generation. If you've got the game that he has, and you play with the intensity with which Allen plays, you've got nothing but fans.
Phil Jackson.
I mean, obviously, sort of the professor. He's got all those championship rings, and it just doesn't happen that way because he has good players. You don't win championships just because you have good players or great players. You have to do something to bring them all together and make them play as a team, and the great ones have to be made to play so they make their teammates better.
Shaquille O'Neal.
He's a hoot. I mean, he's
big kid.
He's
right?
enjoying life. He's I think one of the great centers to have walked the planet. But he's a very nice young man with a real serious view of the world when he's not joking around. And it's been a pleasure to be commissioner while he's been a player.
And how much, Commissioner, how much longer would you want to do this beyond the contract? Or is there anything that might change your mind in between?
I don't think so. I think in the next couple of years, I think I'll be ready to put a sort of a point on it all and say, I'll decide to take up golf. I'll be almost old enough to give up my tennis racket and say my knees won't carry me anymore.
And if 20 or 30 years down the road somebody mentions David Stern's name with basketball here, what would you want them to say?
I have no interest in him. Just he was there. He did a decent job.
Really? That simple?
That's it.
And you...
he understood the possibilities, but it's always about
Okay.
the players and the game. Our fans don't buy tickets to see owners or players. And I'd like them to think that, on my watch, we did almost as much as we could do. You never do as much, but a decent steward.
So, but you obviously were a fan, or you had to
big
apply.
Big fan. If I walk into an arena, whether it's opening night or a playoff game, and I say, boy, can you imagine? I get paid to go sit at center court and watch these great games. It couldn't be bad. That's why I said at the beginning, I got the best job in the world.
All right, he loves this game. That's a great slogan too. Thanks very much for your time and for having us up here in the offices. And keep up the good work. All right?
Thank you.
I appreciate it. David Stern, Commissioner of the NBA, and we thank you for watching. And we'll see you next time. Take care.
For more on this episode of CMI and to see upcoming guests on the Chris Myers Interview, log on to foxsports.com and MSN.